Right. We turn that up and it's up. Good morning. Budget, are you just taking both of these?
Yes.
Okay,
Good morning, Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director. So I'll wait. Do you have the PowerPoint? I don't know. Is Dana online? Or Christy? Think I'm up. Great. So this is the financials. This will be for through February. We pulled the data, and so on the corner, they are part of the general fund. So they're supported by the general fund, and their revenues will not equal our expenditures for the coroner's office. The first item that we have there is intergovernmental, and we have a budget for the year of a little over 141,000, and we have through February $103,595. That's basically primarily two items. The billings for the autopsy cost reimbursement from the state is 42,000 approximately. And then there's a 62,000 grant funding that came in. It was also reported in 2024, but it wasn't received until 2025. So for their revenue, that's basically the only revenues that have come in so far this year.
Christy, is it a gurney?
The grant, it was that lift. Oh, yes.
That lift, yeah. Yeah, okay.
So, and they bill for their autopsy costs twice a year. So this is the first billing, and it was really for July through December of 24, but received in, I think, February. So they'll have another billing of approximately that same amount later this year. So they should achieve their full budgeted revenue on that line item.
You know, there was a couple bills in to help the smaller counties that had to either move to their own coroner. They couldn't do the prosecutor and the coroner together anymore. And there's a couple bills in to give them some funding for that, and it failed. And there's one to kind of delay it, and it failed. Have we heard any from? I know we're helping out with Kayakum. Have any of the other small ones been after since these two failed?
So that's still something that is kind of revealing itself as we go.
Okay.
We've actually recently had a smaller county bring autopsies in, so we will have some revenue from that. We've sent out the billing. And there's just a lot of adjustments that are being made as they turn over to coroner from prosecutor coroner. And so we've seen a few more outside autopsies than we did the second half of last year, just in the recent few weeks.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, on the expense side, the largest expense, of course, that we have is our personnel. We budgeted a little over $836,000, and so currently we have $96,873 in expenses, and in our supplies, 49,000 budgeted. We've only had 4,000 in supplies come through so far. And our services, this is where our internal service departments, that's part of that line, the 401,000 that's budgeted. and they paid some of their internal services, about 82,000 of that 113,000 is internal services. The other item that is in that's fairly large is their professional services that they budget for their forensic examinations. And so that's what's in that budget. So
What constitutes an internal service?
those are typically our IT department billing out
Okay.
to other departments, our risk management, billing our property and our liability insurance
Okay.
assessments. So, and then you have motor pool, some things like that.
So if that's just January's expenses, that one's gonna exceed its budget in a hell of a hurry.
No, it shouldn't, because the billing for our internal services is an annual billing, so it comes all at one time. And so we won't see any internal billings after January, basically after January. The other items will be services like for the forensic examiner, so.
Okay.
That's it. And I'll turn it over to Christy. I think she has some information about operations.
So we've had a very, very busy week. We had 6 autopsies just for our county last week, and we got another 3 autopsies on Saturday alone. And so it's been certainly higher than our average. And out of 224 deaths that have been reported to us, approximately 190 are natural deaths, and that includes ones that are reported to us that we don't investigate in person and others that we do investigate in person. We've had 10 accidents. 3 of those were motor vehicle accidents, and this is just since January 1st. We've had 6 suicides. We have 11 pending, but that includes a likely fire death, which would be an accident. And then we have 1 undetermined. We've had 4 fentanyl overdoses, and 4 methamphetamine overdoses, 4 amphetamine, and 1 cocaine. Almost all of them also have THC, but that's just a side note. So it's been a very, very busy couple months to start the year out. And then, we're scheduling the autopsies for this coming week, but that's, for our casual help, we have our autopsy technicians that are under that category when they get paid. And so when any kind of an increase is why that number is gonna, we've used up quite a bit of it. So.
How do we determine when we do an autopsy?
So we determine for a forensic autopsy, we'll decide to do an autopsy. Age is a big factor, lack of medical history. And then, even if we suspect that there's an overdose, if there's no medical history, we will do a forensic autopsy, because if we send for toxicology and that toxicology doesn't come back with levels that are high enough to have been a cause of death, then we have to have an autopsy to fall back on and, figure out what happened to the person. So, so even if we've seen, this is just off the top of my head because I was rushing, still out of breath going up the stairs. But we've seen an average of between 50 and 60 years old for quite a few of the overdoses. It was actually kind of remarkable. We haven't seen as many in the young people. So usually someone in that age bracket will have medical history, but not everybody does. So we'll, so it flexes a little bit because of that.
What'd you say, 6 suicides?
Yes,
Or is that an older age group too, or?
yes.
Okay,
Between 50 and 60, most of those were self-inflicted gunshot wounds.
Hmm.
Mm.
how many do we usually do a year? Because if we stay on this pace, feels like we're gonna shatter all kinds of records.
Yeah, it's been it's been I guess, an unusual and very sad couple months. But I think I can't remember the exact number of overdoses that we had last year, but we, exceeded the previous year by about 10, I think, 10 or 15. And so, yeah, I mean, if we had kept up this pace, it would definitely be extraordinary. Yeah.
Yeah,
Do we separate a fentanyl death from an overdose? Or is it the same?
We don't necessarily, so overdose deaths will, usually fentanyl is the biggest factor in an overdose deaths. I know that that is nationwide also. I believe that 44,000, don't quote me on that, just in the nation, 44,000 were from fentanyl alone. I believe that's the right number, but so we see fentanyl, but we usually see a mix. Fentanyl, of course, is the deadliest, and so it doesn't take very much to cause an overdose.
So in the overdose numbers that you quoted, fentanyl is included in those. It's not those plus fentanyl.
Yeah, so we've had 4 fentanyl alone and 4 methamphetamine alone. And then the amphetamines are mixed in there usually, and then we've had 1 cocaine by itself. About others.
So the 44,000 number, is that just this year?
I believe that was 2024. So it was last year. It was just something that I read the other day, and I was
Okay.
wanted to look into it more. But it's fentanyl deaths are just nationwide are a crisis.
How
Yeah.
often do you see cocaine overdose?
Not very often. Last year we saw a couple. Of course, one this year. It seemed like it was making a comeback last year. Because illicit drugs will trend. But we haven't seen it didn't continue the trend. So we saw an influx for a few months there, and then after that, we didn't see as many.
Okay.
no, we have a contract with a person to do autopsies for us, and we added another person. I think last year, maybe the time goes by so fast, I don't know if it was last year or the year before. Because it's tough to find a pathologist. They're getting kind of, so I'm just curious how, if that's working out for us, if that's worked well, or,
Yeah, but we're very, very fortunate to have Dr. Nelson.
Yeah.
I know not a lot of counties have a pathologist that just works for that county. And so we've been very blessed. Dr. Luxina, we will call him when Dr. Nelson's not available. And Dr. Luxina has done a few autopsies. Most of the autopsies we've done so far this year have been all Dr. Nelson. And he did 6 last week, which
Yeah.
is,
so, but that system that we've set up, I think sounds like it's working well, like we wanted it to.
yeah, we're very blessed.
And are either one of them nearing retirement?
They say they are, but they keep coming out of retirement, so. But I haven't heard anything from Dr. Nelson. Dr. Luxina will probably never retire, so.
Some counties, I think you or somebody's mentioned before, some counties actually contract with out of state. folks?
They do, yes, there's a couple
Is there-
counties.
It's tough to find a
Mhm.
pathologist in Washington.
Yes, yep. And the Washington Association of Coroners and Medical Examiners has worked with the Association for Elected Officials closely with trying to encourage pathologists to come to Washington State with incentives and just getting, job openings out there. And we've recently went to a conference for forensic pathology, and there was a lot of interest. We had a booth there saying, please come to Washington, talking about how not only how beautiful our state is, but the job opportunities that are available. So we've been working really hard to try to encourage, pathologists to come here, but it has to really start with the choices people are making in school and whether to pursue that as a career. And so
Yeah.
there's that nationwide shortage is going to be felt no matter what. But we've been working on it, and I know the counties try very hard to help each other out. So we've had Mason County come down and for autopsies and, you know.
Yeah, very good. Always appreciate you coming over. It's always kind of sobering to hear some of that stuff, but we appreciate you coming over, and we appreciate the job you guys doing. I think it's working really well, so make sure to pass that on to Dana.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Okay, so our next item is facilities and. Okay, Sean, you want to come up? Okay. Facilities is also a department that's supported by the general fund. And so we have budgeted a 108, almost $190,000 of miscellaneous revenue. But so far this year, we don't have anything on that. That is for billings, I believe, that for some facilities items that are billed, but I don't think that's done till later in the year.
Yeah, our space billings are usually done after the second quarter.
Yep.
Let people get a bit of their funding in before we pull it all back.
So on revenue, we really don't have much of anything. Last year, we had a little over 300,000, 331,000 for the year in total. On expenses, so we have personnel, and we have budgeted a little over 994,000. We have 96,000 actuals through February. And then we have supplies there for a budgeted 137,500. And so far this year, we have expenses of a little over 13,000. On services, this is where we have our internal service charges will go, but this is also where services for utilities, things like that are in this line item. So internal services were paid in January, and so we have actuals of 815,000 through the month of February. And we typically have around 2 million, around 2 million. Actuals last year were 1,000,009 in our services category. And the large amount of the internal services there were for property, the property assessments from our risk pool, which is a little over $400,000. And they currently have nine FTEs filled in facilities and one open, which is for the facilities manager position.
You said that the risk pool is valuating our properties. What,
Yes.
why is that and how does that work?
So our risk pool provides our property insurance package, basically, coverage.
Okay, so that's gonna influence the premiums that we're paying.
Right,
Okay.
right. And so they do an annual assessment of our properties and they look at the values of our properties, and that's partly what goes into the assessment. Really not much on facilities right now. The next item is our capital improvements fund. This also falls under facilities. And this is where our annual project list, our construction progress list is developed. And as far as revenue goes, this fund receives some tax revenues, REIT. And then we have budgeted a little over $1,025,000. And so we've received in through February, 124,000. I think most of that is prior year, so that's probably going to be reversed here when we do our March financials. And then miscellaneous, 298,000. That's most primarily investment income there. And then other financing is a little over $2 million. And that's a budget for our ARPA contribution for the HVAC system at the Hall of Justice. And $1 million from general fund. Because we typically transfer over $1 million of general fund money to this fund to help with the construction projects. On the expense side, we have basically two half-time position, half of the facilities, 2 FTEs, but at 50% time charged to capital projects. And so we have a little bit of expenses there. We have budgeted 109,000. But the largest budget that we have in capital improvements, of course, is the actual projects. So we have budgeted almost $6 million for projects. And we do the whole thing of what we planned or approved. And so like I said, 2 million of that is transfers in funding. So the rest is funded off of the fund balance, basically, and the tax revenues.
And Kathy, the reason that it's half of an FTE because the other half is paid from another fund?
From facilities.
And those are going to be our project managers. So they're managing projects both for non-capital items and capital items on that.
And we have very little that's happened so far this year, so that's why you don't see very much in the actuals. So far, total for the year, only 22,000, but they are getting started on several major projects. And those we'll see later this summer and later in the year.
And so the 310 fund, the capital project fund, is really driven by the 5-year plan that we present to the board annually.
Mhm.
And so that's what's driving those.
Yep. And I'll just, if there's any questions you have, I'll operationally.
I figured you were working on that column.
I think we're good.
Yep.
Good.
That it for budget? I think that's it for budget. So we don't have any agenda item reviews start at 10. So we can recess till 10? Okay.
Yep.
Recess till 10. Okay, back from recess, we'll head through a agenda review. Public Works. Okay,
I'm gonna jump in here before Susan gets going. We have a consent item for approximately 12,680 tons of aggregate for our chip seal this year. So it's that time of the year to start getting the maintenance projects going. I'm not gonna try and say the word it actually says on the agenda.
looks like your very first one.
Yes, sir.
Chip seal. Any idea what we've paid for this in the past, roughly?
It varies shop to shop based upon the freight cost to deliver it to the area.
Oh, that's right.
Mhm.
We have multiple because of where the shops are.
Right, so we'll
Gotcha.
be taking deliveries to all 4 shops this year. And depending on the location of the low bidder on this, it may depend significantly if it's coming from north, south, east, or west.
Yeah, gotcha, okay.
Is there ever any leftover?
So sometimes there is leftovers. We always assume about a 5% pit loss on the area. And we'll do that and use it for parking lots or other items of that nature, yeah.
How much, do we do with Stordals?
So if Stordal's the low bidder on this one, or just in general?
In general?
We have our annual contract for road material surfacing products, and we award that to all bidders. So depending on the area that we're getting the rock from, it may be through Stordal, or it may be through the name of the Klamath company's evading me right now.
Do we have any current contracts with Stordals, do you know?
We do.
How much does it, or is any of that gonna be affected by what's the name of the company, Ritchie, that took over Stordal?
Yeah, so we're working through that process with legal right now
Okay.
on assigning contracts and things of that nature. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
So, good morning, Susan Eugenius, County Engineer. The other item from Public Works is in resolutions. It's item number 6. It's a resolution for County Road Project number 818 for the East Canyon View Drive slide repair project. So in February, the end of this roadway started sliding away, and I literally mean off the end of it. We have had an initial look from our architect, from our geotech, and we are getting ready to see what, if anything, we need to do to finalize it. So this just sets up the project number. If it continues to settle, it will start impacting the roadway.
Good.
Okay. Susan, thanks. This basically just gets the ball rolling here.
This gets our ball rolling, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sheriff's Department, Jordan, I see Jordan's on. I'm assuming this is on the agreement with Fish and Wildlife.
Yes, it is.
It's just a agreement like our other agreements with other agencies to use the gun range.
Correct. Yeah, we just hadn't got an updated one from Fish and Wildlife and they finally got it back to us.
Any questions on that? I think that's pretty straightforward. Okay, sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Finance. She left. Okay, she's headed right back.
Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director. We have we've moved this to a motion item. It's a change order request for the contractor that's doing our annex building flood restoration and remediation. They have finished the mitigation. And because during the mitigation, they discovered asbestos and lead, and so they had abatement that was not originally included in our original contract. And then we also had, because of that, there's going to be some additional masking, drywall, texture, priming, paint for removing those items that were removed during asbestos and lead. So it's a total of a change order in the amount of $23,746.90. The new estimated contract will be $153,351.38. And we originally were authorized under the emergency purchase for a total of $140,000. So that's what we'll be presenting tomorrow for a motion to approve the change order. And
Is
this
it-
is with Prestige Northwest
Yeah.
Construction Services.
Do they think they've found everything? I mean, I know they were doing a lot of drywall work and that probably where a lot of that uncovered, but. when
Yeah,
they
there
start
was
taking-
also some tile that they had to pull up. So that's where we got the asbestos issues. So yes,
So I'm trying to get a comfort level that they're pretty much found what they need to find.
yes.
And
Yes, the asbestos was in some floor tile that they had to remove. Mhm.
And this is one that we're actually going to, is it the risk pool or the insurance company of the people who created the leak?
Yeah, so we will seek recovery from the vendor that the roofing vendor that when the leak occurred, the flooding occurred because of a roofing issue.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah, so we'll be seeking that recovery from them. And our risk pool is assisting us in the event that we're unsuccessful, then we would have to file it as a property claim with our risk pool. But we'll first go after the vendor that provided the roofing. Anything else?
I don't, I was just making a couple notes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. HR. Oh, sorry, corrections. Corrections in HR, however you want to do it. I got ahead of myself. Sorry.
Good morning, Marin Fox, Corrections Director. Tomorrow, we have on the consent agenda the memorandum of understanding with our Corrections Officers Guild. It's been previously discussed with the board. This outlines an agreement with them to provide signing bonuses for new hires and retention bonuses for our current corrections officers. The signing bonus for new hires that have no experience in corrections will be $6,000. And if we get a lateral, which means they have experience, have been through the academy, then it would be an $8,000 signing bonus. And the signing bonuses or the retention bonuses for the corrections officers that are currently employed will be $8,000 split between 2 years. And this is a result of our continued struggle with hiring, not just in Cowlitz County, but in corrections in general. And signing bonuses are really becoming kind of an industry standard. Clark County currently has $10,000 and $25,000 for theirs.
What are the limitations as far as how long have we, put on there to receive those signing bonuses or retention bonuses?
We'll look at it again at the 3-year mark. So we're, you know, if we make some progress and maybe we don't need them anymore, we'll certainly stop providing those. But the intent is to get positions filled that will bring down our overtime costs and our use of temps, and that will offset the money the county will have to pay to do both of these.
What qualifies somebody for a retention bonus?
Well, we worked with the guild on this and we talked about doing it depending on years of service, but that isn't how they wanted to approach it for whatever reason. So all of our current employees that are past probation. So if they're a new hire and they haven't made it through probation yet, they'll be considered like the signing bonus that the new hires get. If they've passed probation, they get the retention bonus of $8,000. We did put some provisions in if we have somebody off on admin leave, they wouldn't get that unless they return in good standing. And also if they haven't worked in the past couple of years, we have some people that have been off quite some time.
Okay,
And is that in a lump sum or incremental?
We're going to split it between 2 years,
Okay.
4,000 and 4,000. And the signing bonuses are also split out as they go through our hiring process. So they get some on the front end, some after FTO training, and some when they actually pass probation.
I know other counties have done it. Has it worked?
Yes,
In which counties has it worked in?
Clark has had a lot of success with theirs. Skagit also. Those are some jail managers I talked to. You know, I wouldn't compare us. I don't know how it's working in like King and Spokane. I wouldn't say that's apples to apples for us, but we work closely with Clark, Skagit. Those are some of, Clark is not a comp, Skagit is. Lewis County isn't doing signing yet, but they are doing retention right now. So, because it's kind of both ways. We need people to stay and we need to get people in the door.
Do you know if they're laterals or are they new? Any idea?
For which one?
These places that are working, are they laterals or are they new? Are
I
they
think they're
taking them from
mostly
people?
new. Laterals are uncommon. But
So we have, what do we have? About 42 positions?
we
For
have 40,
officers?
yes, 42 CO positions were budgeted for. We currently have six vacant.
Supervisors?
Oh, 6 sergeants, yes. This isn't applied to the sergeants at this point. This is just an agreement with the Corrections Officers Guild.
And 3 management
3 captains, yes, and then me.
and then you. So 42 times the 8.
We anticipate in 2025, it will be about 136,000 for the signing, based on the number of employees we have and the number of employees that are currently working and how the MOU is worded. It'd be about the same in 2026. But again, if we're able to get positions filled, I would anticipate we will recoup that through overtime costs.
So we're gonna recoup overtime costs on new positions, not retention. Because the retention isn't gonna affect the overtime.
Right, but it's a 2-year, that's not an ongoing cost. So after the 2-year mark, we pay the 4 and the 4. If we get the positions filled, we just won't be spending as much money to just keep the lights on, essentially.
How many people does the guild represent?
The Corrections Officers Guild is 42 COs.
And then the sheriffs have a guild, right?
The sheriffs have a guild as well, and our sergeants are in a separate collective bargaining agreement, and they're represented by the Teamsters.
So once we put this in place, it seems logical to me that it'll probably morph to the other areas, I would guess, or the request would be there.
Perhaps, I don't think there's a comparison on hiring and the struggle that's happening for us right now. I don't think the
Well, I don't-
sheriff's office has had as much trouble getting applicants and getting people in the door. I don't think they have as many openings as we do.
And I would probably agree with that, but I would also probably say that the guild will see it as a benefit, and it doesn't matter if they're able to hire or not, that they'll want that benefit for their officers in other places. So I'm just saying, we're opening up a pretty big can, and frankly, I'm struggling with it. Cause I know who pays the bill on all this stuff.
Yep.
And I have an entity that's trying to take future stuff from us, tax receipts from us, and they won't be the last one if that gets successful. So I'm just trying to figure out how we make all that work.
And this is unprecedented. This is not something I'd ever thought I'd be in front of the board asking for, but we need to be able to run a facility, and we're hitting a crisis mode, and we'll have to make some drastic changes if we can't get people hired. So,
And explain to me crisis mode. What's that look like?
well, one of our only options would be to drop our minimum staffing levels. And in order to do that, we would probably, the only thing we could really do is implement booking restrictions. So to reduce the number of bookings we have, which then affects the community and the cities, and that's less than ideal.
So what's your projection on the current overtime costs versus what this is gonna impact it? How much?
Well, last year we had 8 positions open and we spent about 640,000 on overtime, which is the highest I've ever seen it. In years when we've had 2 positions open, it's ranged in the $300,000 to $400,000 range. So you can, I could show you year by year, when we get those open positions down, that overtime drops as well. I mean, you're going to always have unanticipated time off. Like the FMLA and the Washington paid family leave has really had an impact as well. We currently have 2 people off on that. We have 1 off on military, and those are things we can't control. But our vacancies, we can.
Marin, of the 8 vacancies that we have, do we know which ones we lost to lateral movement, other counties? If there were any, or what were the reasons that we have 8?
I could pull that. It's, it rolls from year to year. So in 2023, we had 5 positions open. And I have pulled together that information. We've seen more people relocating. We've had a handful of people relocate, 2 that I can think of in the last year. We've lost, we lost 2 in the last couple of years to law enforcement. That's pretty common for people to start in corrections and then step out into law enforcement.
We did a pretty substantial change in the salary grades. Time goes by, so it's hard to remember how long ago we did that. And but we still have open positions, so that really didn't affect anything?
It didn't affect it as much as I would have hoped. We entered into a 3-year agreement with the Corrections Officers Guild in, let's see, it was 24 to 26. And we did a 10%, 6%, 4%, I believe. So we certainly bumped our wages up, and I would have anticipated that would have had more of an impact than it has, but
But we still have the open.
here we are, yeah. Although that didn't go into effect until probably April, May of 24, but it hasn't had the impact I would have hoped.
Where are we at with our comps on the people that we're talking about right now compared to other counties? And do you know, are other counties, do they have the same number comparable vacancies that we do?
Yes. I don't know where we are on comps now. When we entered into this 3-year agreement, that 10% got us into the range of comps. But as counties are signing new agreements, I don't know where the other counties are at now on their percentages, how much they've increased their salaries. But I do know for Lewis County, for example, is in a very similar position as far as number of positions open, and they're probably our very closest comp. Their FTEs are about the same as ours, and I believe they have quite a few open as well. And they have, I think, 4 anticipated retirements coming up.
Any other options for solving this problem?
I don't. I mean, I'm certainly open to suggestion. We're looking what other counties are doing. Some counties are doing a, really big advertising push in addition to signing and bringing up their salaries quite a bit. Clark County, for example, they have vehicles that have their advertisement on vehicles. I went to a movie and there was an advertisement at the beginning of a movie for hiring. So I think Spokane County took out a billboard in New York City. So agencies are doing some interesting things to try to get applicants. But in the industry and people that I've talked to in other counties, the signing or retention has helped, and counties are having to give unprecedented percentage increases just to keep up with our comps. I mean, it's a tough industry. Corrections certainly isn't for everyone. It is not something you don't hear kids saying, when I grow up, I want to go work at a jail. It's the officers are doing really, really tough, unpleasant work. You all have toured, you know what those conditions look like and the things they're exposed to. So it's tough to get people in the door and keep them.
You said that one of the things that we would have to do is change our booking. Due to the current staffing issues that we have we made any adjustments in our booking? Are we still taking people that we need to be taking? It hasn't impacted that, it's just impacted overtime.
That's correct. We're taking all bookings. We limit DOC a little bit, but we take all of our local fresh bookings, which is uncommon. Most counties have some level of restriction, and we've still been able to do that. We did drop 2 positions during COVID because our bookings dropped pretty dramatically. I have not asked to return those because we're down this many positions. It doesn't make sense. That was a booking rover that we had on shift to help with the number of bookings, and we've been able to maintain without that, but our bookings have bumped back up, not quite to pre-COVID level, but close.
Have we ever had any instances in the jail where we've had to Narcan our own officers because of exposure to fentanyl?
No, not Narcan, but we have had officers exposed. We've not had it, not to that level. We've had to Narcan quite a number of inmates, but no, we've not had an officer exposure to that level, thankfully.
Yeah, I don't know what I struggle with this because I get the sense that the problem isn't really a money problem. It's that people don't want to be in this industry. When I've asked you before, you go over the college and you'll tell me there's one person that shows up for a deal. So I think that indicates me that it's not an industry people are looking to get into. So I don't know how much money you throw at that to try and correct that.
I agree with that. I've been with the county 26 years. When I applied, it was because it paid enough that it made me consider it. I mean, truly, that's where we get people. We get people from the mills and places. They look at it and they think, okay, well, for that, I might be able to do that job for that amount. And that just is reality. And we used to be, strides above working at Target, but the private industry is paying better now. And I don't think we're as attractive as we once were.
Yeah. And I have thoughts on that too. I don't know that you can ever, it's difficult to compete with private industry because they make a product, they have something they sell, and if they have a good year, a lot of times, they share it with employees. We're a transfer agent. We take from somebody over here and we give to somebody over here. We don't produce anything. So it's a different animal. And so I'm always cognizant of the people that we have to take from though I know there's certain job levels we need to have, it's just how far do I go? It's a struggle, at least for me.
Well, if your option is to increase the annual salary where you gotta pay it every year versus a one-time thing.
Well, that's my argument here. I don't think this is a one-time thing. I think once you start this benefit stays. You saw the difficulty we had in coming to agreement to shut down the sunset on the tax. Once it's in place, it's very difficult, and us three, if we're here in that period of time, would probably make that decision, but I don't know what happens down the road. I just think, to me, to look at this, I look at it through the lens that this is the way it's gonna be, and what do I do with that? And I guess that's probably where a lot of the struggle comes in.
I would
Uh,
anticipate in years going forward after we pay the retention in 25 and 26, the cost, if we continue doing the signing, would probably be around 30,000. Our five FTE a year is would be pretty average for us as far as hiring.
Yeah. Well, I'll be interested tomorrow, see if any conversation comes up on it.
Well, I think the advantage of this gives you the option, next time you can always say no. But once you put it into an annual salary, you're not gonna say no.
I think that I agree with you guys on what you're saying. The thing that keeps popping up in my mind is that if we look at two things that we're trying to accomplish overall at the county level, and that is that we want people who break the law to go to jail. And the citizens, I think that's part of, communal safety. If we're having a hard time getting people to come into that industry, then we better do what we need to do to make sure that we keep the ones that we got. And I'm with you on this one, Chairman, that this could be a 20, 30-year thing. Who knows? I mean, I don't know where the end of it is. We're at the inception of it, but I think the reasonable expectation that people have of us is that we do what we need to do to make sure that we provide those essential services to help keep people safe. It's one of those knots in my stomach, that we have to do things like this. But I also feel that looking at the alternatives, I would rather swallow this jagged little pill than a bigger one.
Yeah, I think that of all the services we provide, law and order is somewhere near the top of the list for me.
Yeah. Tomorrow should be fun.
For who?
Well, we'll see what the public has to say tomorrow.
Okay.
I would suggest if we get a lot of public comment that we might want to move this off of consent and put it into a separate motion item, but
Okay.
we'll see how that goes tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
HR,
Thank you.
Jessica.
Good morning, Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I have on the consent agenda the subscriber agreement for life insurance for our Teamsters clerical group. It's 4 employees, I believe. We provide life insurance for the rest of the county through Cigna. They get their life insurance through the Teamsters. So this is just it's not signed annually, it's signed once a contract cycle for us to provide that life insurance payment for that small group.
Do they have to opt into that, or is it just automatically provided?
It's just automatically provided. Basic life is an employer paid benefit. So we pay for most all of the county through the Cigna plan. They just opt to get theirs through the Teamsters, which is actually cheaper. So
And it looks like the benefit is 4,000.
Yeah, it's also a smaller benefit than the other county provided life insurance, but this is the plan that they've chosen, so.
And it's 29 hours a week to qualify. Is that comparable with the others?
Yes, that's comparable for, typically you have to work 80% of the time to receive paid benefits. So that's the same as our basic life. And all employees in this group are full-time employees.
Looks pretty standard. I see
Yeah.
it in a lot of places.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Risk. I see you got over and back safely.
Good morning, Commissioners. I have two agenda items. One is our risk pool resolution. We updated it with two new commissioners. We updated one director as Steve Rader, alternate director as Stephen L. Farrell, Farrell. We updated the resolution, and so that'll be an agenda item. So that's one. Any questions? And that's for our risk pool. Ferrell. Did I spell it wrong? Or did I say it wrong? Oh, I'm sorry, FE. Okay, thank you. And then our second agenda item is our personal services agreement for our Everly Vivian workers' compensation. We are looking to extend that personal service agreement through September. That allows us to continue our work with Everly Vivian. This agreement is necessary so that we can continue to be able to have a partnership with them. At this time, we have no plans to look at a new service agreement unless otherwise instructed. Right now, we're paying a very nominal fee in comparison to what other counties are paying for private type of insurance. And that's through our Everly Vivian, our workers' compensation. And this just extends that personal service agreement through September.
Do you know, Shelley, how long we've been with them?
Gosh, I want to say at least 5 years that I can go back on.
Yeah, that's fine. I just.
Yeah.
And
And speaking to
I haven't
other
heard anything
counties.
about them, so I'm assuming they've been doing well, or we'd probably hear about it, right?
Yeah, I've been mentoring another county and they do private, and what they've been paying privately, ooh, I'm not sure how they can afford it. So
Yeah.
what we get at a deep discount by using this vendor is a cost savings to Cowlitz County. And that's it. So those are my two agenda items. Any questions?
Good.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks. And I was sad Woodland Girls lost in overtime.
All that.
But
But
it
they
They
took it to
fought
overtime,
hard,
right?
man. They fought hard.
Your daughter was almost wrong. She was worried there.
I know, I was worried because I didn't have a hotel for the next night. Have a good day.
Making notes. I don't. But I think yeah, it looks like we have everybody here for 11 o'clock. If you want to just continue, are you good with that? Okay. Jessica, I see you're at the top of the list there.
I don't have any HR requests, but I do have one executive session request. So
Okay.
for qualifications of an applicant. Yeah, we're waiting for Judge Evans to come, so we can do that after your other items too.
Okay. Then, how many minutes do you think you'll need on that?
5,
Oh, pretty quick.
it
huh?
should be a quick one, 5 to 10.
Okay, when Judge Evans comes in, we'll try and schedule that.
Okay.
How about, Tracy, you want to talk about the BPAC? And I think the Yale Valley Library, they have, if they can get anybody, that's pretty good, but
Morning, Commissioners. Tracy Jackson, Building and Planning. We have 2 members of our advisory committee that are up in July, and I solicited them to send in reappointment. They were both interested. One's been with the organization since it started in 2008, 2009, so it's kind of nice to see she wanted to be reappointed. We've got some great momentum going on right now with private roads. And then we have our comp plan that we are just kicking off tomorrow, and it's nice to have their support as well. So I know they're not expiring until July, but since they've asked for reappointment, I would support both of those requests.
I've worked with both of them on the BPAC and I think both of them have good stuff to offer.
They have a lot to contribute, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Good with them?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That was it.
And then the Yale, they have 2, and I think that's okay, that anybody they can.
Yeah, if they're willing to do that.
Yeah. Okay. We got a new request for a proclamation, Crime Victim Awareness Week, April 6th to the 12th. We read that through. We okay with it? Who, do you know who's bringing this one in? Emergency Support Shelter?
Did they touch on this when they came and presented to us?
Trying to remember.
I think they did.
I
a
think they
little bit.
might have
Yeah.
touched on it a little bit. So you'll set them up sometime in April? Okay. Yeah. Okay. We have Great Rivers Behavioral Health with us today. You can. Okay, okay. Yeah. So no, we can wait till your other person is here. We told them we wouldn't start till 11, so we'll give them time. We can just recess, and as soon as Judge Hahn comes on, somebody can let us know, and we can maybe get that done. Okay. Why don't we just recess till Judge Evans shows up then? Okay? Okay, back from recess. Jessica, I think we'll do that executive session now. Qualifications of an applicant, 5 minutes. Okay. Okay, back from executive session, no decisions rendered. I'll turn it over to you, Jessica.
Jessica Warren, Human Resources again. I do have a request from Superior Court to start their applicant for the therapeutic court manager at step 7, which is $78.35 a month.
Okay. Okay, I'm good with it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we have Great Rivers with us today. We have 2 mics over there and 1 mic over here, however you want to do it. Yeah, that's fine.
long as we can all get a mic in front of you, that's great.
All right. Well, good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having us today. My name is Trinidad Medina. I am the Chief Executive Director with the Great Rivers ASO, which is the Behavioral Health Administrative Service Organization. We oversee the behavioral health crisis system in our 5-county region, which includes Cowlitz, Wahkiakum, Pacific, Grays Harbor, and Lewis counties. And we also administer other federal block grant dollars and legislatively directed programs. But the bulk of our business is the Behavioral Health Crisis Network. We are not a service provider, so we do not provide any direct service. We contract with organizations in the community to provide that service that are familiar with the local resources and implement directives as the community needs. So today we have a presentation for you regarding a change that will be happening very soon within our region. We have a presentation. I don't know if that's available online or we can see that. I don't know how we'll coordinate the slides, but we do have a presentation for you today. And okay, it's been pulled up. Thank you. And so this presentation is regarding the 988 Behavioral Health Crisis Line and our regional crisis line. So we're going to share some more information about the call centers that are available to individuals in Cowlitz County and our region for accessing our crisis system. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over here to Drew here to my left for an introduction, and you can kind of share a little bit about what Columbia Wellness does as well.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. I'm Drew McDaniel. I'm the CEO for Columbia Wellness. Columbia Wellness has been in Cowlitz County for about 75 years. We're one of the oldest providers of behavioral health services in our region. I've been there for 31 years. I'm the old guy. So back in time, if we go back to the mid-70s, the federal government asked each state to come up with a way to provide for the emergent behavioral health needs of their community members. The state of Washington, like all states, looked around to see what was in existence and found a model in Illinois that they preferred and modified it to meet the needs of Washingtonians. From that legislation, there were programs created which included an emergency 24-hour crisis hotline. This crisis hotline was to be the very first source or resource for opportunity of help for those persons seeking behavioral health intervention or those persons seeking behavioral health intervention on behalf of a loved one or friend. Columbia Wellness, at the time Cowlitz County Guidance Association, was the very first provider of those crisis line services in Cowlitz County. And Columbia Wellness, through the old regional support networks that we had, the Great Rivers Behavioral Health Organization, BHO, and now the Great Rivers ASO, has always contracted to be the provider of that service in our region. And we're very proud of the service that we have given to our community members. We answer that phone within 3 rings or less. It is a live person 24 hours a day. And we are en route within typically 15 to 20 minutes or less to meet folks where they need us. In 2021, the legislators passed engrossed substitute House Bill 1477. This new law in Washington State said, let's take our crisis system and encourage 2 major changes. The first was to move to the federal 988 crisis hotline, suicide hotline system. And most states are in the process of adopting the 988 system. Washington being one of those. The second is to take those mobile crisis teams and let's enhance them to be more responsive, more boots on the ground when the call comes in for help. Columbia Wellness was faced with a decision. We managed that crisis line for all 5 counties that Trinidad just identified. Those 5 counties, we average 4,000 crisis calls a month on those crisis lines. To remain the regional crisis line and to provide services through that crisis line system, the way that the new law is set up, we would need to become a 988 provider. Being a 988 provider would mean that we now would take calls from across the 988 system. And that being a national system, our staff sitting on 14th Avenue would conceivably get calls from around the nation. That is a wonderful thing to do, but it's not our mission in Cowlitz County. So what is our mission? Our mission has always been to be there. Let's then focus on the boots on the ground. How can we become an enhanced mobile crisis team, an endorsed mobile crisis team, which gives us a greater opportunity to respond than we've had before? Well, step one is to give up something that we've held dear for so long, and that is the crisis line. Not triaging 4,000 calls a month allows our boots on the ground to get to where you need us to be quicker. But this was a hard decision to make. And it wasn't one that we held in a vacuum. We met with community stakeholders. We met with NAMI groups who serve this population. And the understanding and path in front of us was clear. Go back to the ASO and say we want to still be a wonderful partner and provide those boots on the ground, but the call service we're going to need to give up so we can do a better job with the other. And that's where we stand, and that's what's taking us towards April 1st, which is a planned day of transition for that crisis line to go to a new provider.
To go where?
To a new provider.
Okay.
Could you explain what is NAMI?
NAMI is the National Association for the Mentally Ill. It is a family support system for individuals who have been diagnosed with behavioral health.
Okay.
Thank you, Drew. And that brings us to the next slide. The transition of our regional crisis line. The ASO released a request for information out to the community, our provider network, to gauge interest in the service. And we were fortunate to have Olympic Health and Recovery Services be interested in our regional crisis line. And over the past 4 months, roughly 4 months, we have been convening and meeting every other week to work on a transition. We want to ensure that there are no gaps in this transition at all. So we've been meeting as a team to ensure that when your family member calls, they will have somebody to answer and respond as seamless as possible from the work that Columbia Wellness had done for so well for so long. And so we'll be transitioning over to Olympic Health and Recovery Services beginning April 1st. The regional crisis line that we have, the 1-800 that's known to our communities, isn't changing. So I like to think of it as behind the scenes change from the operator's standpoint. So we'll have new organization taking those calls, those 4,000 calls a month that Drew shared. And that'll be our new provider. I'd like to just hand the meeting over here to Joe Avalos, Olympic Health and Recovery Services. If we can go to the next slide.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having me. My name is Joe Avalos. I'm the Executive Director of Olympic Health and Recovery Services. We are a behavioral health agency licensed in the state of Washington. And while we have not been around as long as Columbia Wellness, we have been doing this work here for about 8 years. And we have been contracted with the Great Rivers BHASO for that since 2018 for the designated crisis responder services. And so this is the service that we have mental health professionals who are called out to do an involuntary assessment evaluation to determine whether or not somebody needs involuntary treatment, whether they're a danger to themselves, others, or they're not able to do their activities of daily living because of behavioral health conditions. So we've been doing that in the 5-county Great Rivers region since that time, and working very closely with Drew's team in coordinating mobile crisis response and DCRs. So we are not new to the region. We've been here for the last 8 years. And I'll also say we've been running a regional crisis line in the Thurston Mason region. So we're very familiar with how to do this service. And so when we heard that Drew's group was going to be focusing on mobile crisis, of course, we endorsed that. We want to continue the partnership. We want to continue providing the service. How can we expand and how can we be helpful with the regional crisis line, understanding that it is going to transition into 988 as the state is moving towards that. To that end, we are also applying to be a 988 hub for this region, for the Great Rivers region, as well as the Thurston Mason region. I don't know, are you going to talk later about?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll talk a little bit later about the current state of 988, but our mission in being a not-for-profit community-based agency is to provide outreach service, regional crisis line service, and then hopefully 988 hub as well. And we have been taking steps over the last year to apply for accreditation, to just getting everything ready so that when the state releases their RFP for 988 hubs, we will be well positioned to become one of those hubs. Part of that was getting accreditation through the International Council for Helplines. We are now accredited member of that organization, which really just means that we've had to undergo rigorous training, policies and procedures, and implementing all of these backstops so that we can meet the national standards to become a 988 hub. Happy to answer any questions as well.
I do have one. Do you foresee a lag time in the response? I know, Drew, you said you guys answer within 3 rings. You're mobilized in 10 to 15 minutes. But if we're going to have, by the off chance, somebody in Oklahoma City answering a phone call from somebody in Wahkiakum County, is there going to be, lag time with the response to mobilize Drew's team?
That is a great question, and I think we're sitting for the next 3 days. Trinidad and I are sitting on a 988 planning committee to address exactly those questions, because the ultimate goal is, yes, the 988 hubs centers, to Drew's point, do have to back each other up, but I think everyone here in this state is trying to get it so that it's just within the state at least. So maybe not Oklahoma City, but it could be that somebody calls and Spokane answers. But that's a little bit better than if we're calling in somebody in New York answers. And I know that historically has been the piece. The other challenge with 988 has been routing through area codes, and that doesn't work. But they have since made strides to align it with more of what I think by satellite, correct? Or
Cell towers.
Cell towers, sorry, there we go. I think they've got all the providers except AT&T. So it very much is still a work in progress. So it will be bumpy, but having the RCL line in it, trying to keep it in as faithful to what Drew's team built over the last several years, and having it done by us as a provider who's familiar with the organization, familiar with the resources here, and still providing the DCR service, we were hoping that we can triage calls a little bit better. As it stands now, people call the RCL line, but folks also call the DCR line. And with this new partnership, that will be mitigated. And so we'll hopefully reduce the number of calls that might be duplicated, which does happen from time to time as now.
May I add?
Yep,
just to
yes,
that?
please.
So one of the things that we understand is that clinicians nationwide are trained in what's called trauma-informed care to understand what trauma does to a person. And I'm grateful for the team here that I sit with, we believe in culturally informed care. We had a woman many years back that would call our crisis line when she was out of milk. Okay, well, what we learned was when she was out of her milk, the acid reflux kicked in, it kicked in her anxiety, kicked in her depression, and that kicked in a level of psychosis. So every time she called out of milk, we all chipped in 50 cents and went and got her a couple gallons of milk. That's what you do in a community like ours. A call goes like that to 988 in New York, they may not get that level of care. So to have a partner that's willing to say, raise their hand and say, yeah, we'll do it, and we'll try to do the same thing you guys did at that level, this is good. We're appreciative of this.
So the local 1-800 number is 5 counties and the 988's national.
Yes.
So if I understood the transitioning process, the 800 number is going to go away?
So it's not necessarily going away. It will be, its focus will change. And actually, if we can go into the next slide, kind of talk through some of that and those changes. But the goal of that 1-800 number is to remain a professional services line. So for law enforcement, other community behavioral health organizations, schools, more professional type organizations that access crisis service for consultation or dispatch of our local resources. That's what the 1-800 number will be in the future.
How does a person who's using the 800 number now know whether or not they're supposed to use 800 number or the 988? How are they going to differentiate that?
You know, that's a great question. We're moving forward with a no wrong door policy at this time, where it's regardless of where somebody calls, whether they call 988, they will be able to receive help that they need, or if they call our 800 number, they will be able to receive service as well. So we're going forward with a no wrong door kind of policy. But the goal of 988 is to be the main number for help seekers. 988 is an easy number to remember, just like 911, right? Our 1-800 number, which is 800-803-8833, like I have to look at the screen to be able to just remember that right off the top of my head, because it's not something I access every day. And for our community to remember that number, I think it's a little more challenging as well. But there are people like, as Drew mentioned, the woman who needs help that has that programmed in her phone for just a rapid dial. So we don't want to lose that connection. So throughout this transition, our goal is to maintain that service level as much as possible. But going forward with more marketing to 988, the help seeker, individuals in our community, your family members, yourself, myself, could call 988 to access behavioral health treatment. That is the long-term goal. As Joe pointed out, there's some transition that's happening that's been a bit bumpy, but we're working through that. And as a region, I think we're doing what we can to support our community members to ensure that there is that availability of service and that there is that seamless handoff between our providers. Not only the regional crisis line, but also warm handoffs to our mobile crisis teams in the 5-county region and our DCRs, designated crisis responders.
So of the 4,000 calls a month that you get now, how many of them are repeat people and how many of them are new every month?
We do provide stats to the ASO regarding that, and we do have a large number of repeat clients that call. I don't have those stats in front of me, but I would say it's almost 60% new, 40% recurring. The number that we identified, though, the 4,000, what we know is that as 2025 continues to roll out and 2026 begins to roll in, we will see the state pushing 988. And there's two reasons why it hasn't happened already. The first reason is, one, they are understaffed. Staffing has been an issue nationwide with behavioral health care. They've acknowledged they're understaffed. They're on a hiring spree. The second is the technology. 988 calls came in based on your area code for your phone. So if you have a 360 area code and you're in North Carolina, it's still going to ring here, not in North Carolina. The state's moving it to a cell tower-based geolocator. That takes time. So the state has not pushed 988 to the extent that they will be. So 988 will get marketed to the community as the door for help seekers. And as Trinidad said, because many people already are comfortable and familiar with the 1-800, it will remain in place with the ultimate goal of helping the help seeker know to call 988, helping the professional looking for help to call the 1-800 number.
Thank you, Drew.
This is not an attempt at levity in this situation. What is the number? Do you know what the number is for call before you dig? I thought it was 988, but it's obviously not. There's another program. You know what I'm talking about? 811. Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Yeah. So in our current system, the current design is, you have a help seeker, an individual out in the community whose family member is in crisis. You have a couple options: call 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, or call the regional crisis line. And so in both cases, as mentioned, the goal is to provide intervention, stabilization, and if needed, dispatch out a local mobile crisis team. So currently what's happening, if a help seeker calls 988, that call will be taken by 988 operators and then handed off to our regional crisis line so that we could dispatch our local resources. And so it could be one of our mobile crisis teams that would respond at that point. You have a question? Oh, okay. So if we can go to the next slide, please. I think Drew mentioned earlier in his in the opening that, they were forced with a difficult decision whether to expand out to serve nationally or, look at focusing the resources in direct mobile crisis response. And in September, the Washington State Department of Health and the Healthcare Authority released a joint statement that provided more of the vision for the future alignment of crisis services. And that was that, our regional crisis lines would be for professionals like the Department of Social and Health Services, first responders, other community resources. Those organizations would access our regional crisis line going forward. They initially gave us a date of January 1st, 2026 to have that in place, but that's been pushed out, and we're moving in that direction as best moving in that direction based off of where we're at as a region with being able to do that. And so with information sharing like this, we'll share more about the overall vision of where that needs to go. But help seekers will then be accessing more of that 988 line. Next slide, please. We do have a timeline here for you.
On that last slide, does that mean somebody calls 988 and then somebody from the 988 service is gonna call the 800 number to get regional help to somebody?
That is how it's set up now, yes. So we have been working with our 911 and other community stakeholders on developing dispatch protocols so that we have a clear path as to how to make sure that individual is handed off to our local resources as seamless as possible. So that has been happening as well simultaneously with all of the other changes to our crisis system. And, but at this time, that's what it is 988 will transfer the individual or work with our regional crisis line to ensure that local resources are dispatched.
Well, I think you just touched on it, but if somebody calls 911 in need of mental help, they're gonna get handed off to 988.
So we're in the process of developing the protocols and it's not as seamless as we would like. 911 would be one of those professional resources or community members that would just go to our regional crisis line. So that they would bypass the 988. 988 is going to be intended for the community members and people out in the community, not necessarily our 911 centers.
Okay.
So we have a timeline here in front of you for this year. And Q1, we've been working on onboarding and training our new regional crisis line provider, Olympic Health and Recovery Services. We're working on data sharing agreements, or will be working on data sharing agreements once the Department of Health and the Healthcare Authority provides us with those templates so that we can ensure that there's a seamless transition of information between the crisis providers, specifically 988 down to our regional crisis lines. So that's happening Q1. And then also, you know, we're going into the communities and sharing this information about the change that's happening and what to expect going forward. So that's all happening Q1. Q2, Olympic Health and Recovery Services will be our new provider. They'll be operational, taking calls from our community. There is some evaluation that's going to be happening from the Great Rivers ASO side. As Drew pointed out, we receive a lot of data from our providers, so we'll be looking at that and just trying to ensure that the quality of services is continuing. And then also the Department of Health is going to be opening up their application process for those new hubs that we're interested in being a 988 provider in our state. And I should point out that the 988 hubs are not contracted through the Great Rivers ASO. Those hubs are contracted through the Department of Health. So we are a few steps removed from that contracting process in that our contracts as a Great Rivers ASO are with the Washington State Healthcare Authority. So I want to make that distinction for you.
Trinidad, could you go back to the data sharing part of it?
Yes.
So does that mean that when somebody calls, let's just say a citizen calls 988, are they going to have to go through like an interview process, gathering data, and then they're going to get sent to the crisis line, and that data is going to be given to the crisis line by whoever is representing 988, not again by the client, and obviously HIPAA is involved in that. And you're talking about streamlining the protocol. Is that part of it? Or what are we looking at as far as that goes?
That is part of it, yes. Yes, we want to minimize how many times a person is sharing their story or their situation. So there's some of that needs to take place as far as the agreements, so that we can streamline the data. The platforms aren't built yet. The state of Washington is, I believe, releasing an RFP for those platforms in July. So this is a multi-year project, but we're in its infancy and working out those details. At this time, the best case is a handoff between the 988 to our regional crisis line, that live transfer and that handoff of information. Good question.
Well, I'm worried about the time lag in there for somebody who's talking about doing suicide and have all these multiple steps to get from point A to point Z is going to be potentially very costly in lives if you got very many serious people sitting with a shotgun up against their chin.
Right, and so you bring up a really good point in that, this is moving at a much slower pace than I think initially anticipated when House Bill and Gross Second Substitute Bill, Bill 1477 was passed. The timeline has changed, but the reason for that is because we don't want people falling through the cracks. We don't want to push 988 and them not have the staff to be able to provide the service. So we're keeping intact our systems to be able to ensure that there is still that safety net available to our communities. So
If I could add, I think the ultimate goal for our organization and for our work in the region here in becoming a 988 provider is to avoid exactly what you're saying. So if somebody calls 988, it's coming to OHRS. They don't have to call the 800 number. It's the same staff. We then know, oh, this is somebody that is in need of Drew's team service right away. We make that connection and the dispatch happens, to Drew's point, within 15 to 20 minutes. So that's the ultimate goal.
The filtering process doesn't take place at 988. It's going to take place when they transfer them to the crisis line, to your team. Am I understanding that correctly?
You go.
I was gonna say that it just, I think there will be a filtering process at the 988. I mean, there will need to be an awareness of where that individual resides to be able to dispatch out the local resources.
Okay.
So there is that needs to happen. How our regional crisis line handles it now, maybe you'd like to speak to that, Drew, as far as dispatching out our local resources.
Certainly. This is something I recently did with our legislators when we went up and met with them 2 weeks ago. Have you dialed 988 before? Okay. I'm going to call 988.
You've reached the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Para español, marque el número 2. If you are a veteran or service member or are calling about one, press 1. To connect to support for LGBTQI+ youth and young adults, press 3. If you are of Native descent and would like to be connected to the Native and Strong Lifeline to speak with a counselor, press 4. Otherwise, to talk with a counselor, stay on the line or press 0.
Okay.
I get annoyed at phone trees when I'm calling for service on my vehicle. I couldn't imagine if I have a mental health crisis and I have to go through that.
I was gonna say, that's gotta be a joke.
Yeah.
Those phone trees create mental crisis for me.
Yeah, I can just imagine how that's gonna be. Yes.
This is the regional crisis line.
Crisis, this is Malia.
Leah, hi, this is Drew. I was just doing a quick test with the county commissioners and you passed.
That.
All right, thank you so much.
Good one.
You too, bye-bye. The legislators said the same thing. I get that when I call my bank. This is, I think, an opportunity for us as we advocate for persons in our communities. We have gone to Volunteers of America, who is one of the large hubs for 988 in our state, and said, is there a way to bypass that phone tree? Now, this is a national system. That's where the rub comes in. Sure, you might want that for your community, but this is a national 988 program. So I think one of the things that is being worked on at the national level is just to offer at the beginning, if you want to talk to a counselor, hit 0 now. What we have found is that that takes about 35 seconds from the moment you hit the button of which group you're calling from. It takes between 30 and 35 seconds. So you're on there for a minute before you get a live body. Thus the importance of a regional crisis line. This is why we want this to remain. And it will remain. And if we can work with our state on the healthcare authority on how 988 rolls out, our voices should be heard. Because what you got on option 2 was what everyone should get, especially if they're on the side of the bridge, are sitting at home with a gun in their hand. That's important to us.
If I was one of your regular callers from a 1-800 number and you called me up and said, oh, by the way, from now on, call 988 first, and I called that one time, I'd call you back on that 1-800 number and tell you right where you could put that and my phone.
And I'd probably say thank you, and I agree with you. That is why it's so, we are blessed in our part of the state to have Trinidad and his group, Joe and his group, and all of the advocates in our region to say, we can do better. And that's why we want to planfully implement this as best as we can.
Thank you, Drew. That live answer, it's rare. And across the state, we are one of the only ASO regions that has that available, and we fully intend to continue that live answer as long as we can. Because that's a huge value to individuals, as you mentioned. It's that somebody's suicidal, they need to talk to somebody right away, not go through a phone tree. So that is our mission, to make that service as available as quickly as possible. We do have metrics and standards that we need to follow contractually, and we're continually at a 98, 99% abandonment rate or calls within 30 seconds. So we're occasionally some calls might take a little longer than 30 seconds or the person hangs up, but I'm very proud of those numbers. We are meeting that at a very high rate. So 99% of the time, somebody answers with a live person in less than 3 seconds. That's huge.
Trinidad, you said as long as we can. What does that mean? And what would cause us not to be able to continue to do that?
What would cause that, and I think this is years down the road, is if these technology platforms make it even less seamless or more seamless as possible to access local response. I see that changing our systems. But that's years down the road. I mean, the state's just going out for an RFP. It's going to take, a lot of time to analyze those, implement, and then train and operationalize that new system throughout the state. So locally, we'll continue doing what we can to do what we do. Through those every other week regional crisis line transition meetings that we're having with Olympic Health and Recovery Services and Columbia Wellness, the agenda items have been included or have included those frequent callers. So we're looking at our phone system to see what numbers are those that are calling us on a regular basis so that we can begin that transition or that warm handoff over to our new provider. So that work is happening to ensure that remains seamless.
Well, my first impression of this whole thing is number one, anybody calling a crisis line should be getting a live voice first and maybe a phone tree second, which tells me that from a state level, they think mental health is a joke. I mean, that's my perspective of it. And the first and second problems that in my mind, that you're having for getting anything implemented is state government. God help us.
Yeah, so, regionally, I think we have a great partnership here with the three of us at the table to ensure that our community has what it needs to access the services they need at the time they need. I don't know if y'all are limited for time, but we have gone, I think, had some really good discussion. I don't want to kind of go through every single item on our timeline here, but what I really want to point out here is that by this time next year, there will be a new 988 hub identified in the state of Washington, or at least there'll be 4 hubs identified in the state of Washington. Great Rivers ASO has an opportunity to recommend a hub to a 988 hub to the Department of Health. And today, as part of this presentation, I would like to seek your support in a letter of recommendation for Olympic Health and Recovery Services to be that hub beginning this time next year, officially as a 988 provider, which will give us an integration within our region systems, crisis systems, for just those lateral transfers or those vertical transfers between 988 and our regional crisis line and our community mobile crisis teams.
May I add a little piece to
Yes,
that?
please.
So this past summer, we took a gentleman by the name of Levi out to dinner. Levi is the director of Volunteers of America, the 988 hub, which is one of the largest in Washington state. And he let us know that the state healthcare authority will be selecting 4 hubs for 988 for Washington state, that they will allow those 4 hubs to come in and contract with to provide 988 service. Colorado is one of the largest 988 hubs. It has 4 states that it covers. And it has already said, we want Washington. We've already talked about New York. If we have the opportunity to keep it local, I would beg that we do. So I certainly support what Trinidad has requested.
And if I could just add, Commissioner Farrell, to your point, there are some challenges that we won't be able to overcome with the phone tree because it's national. You know, there'll be some regulations that we just have to follow. But our organization is committed to serving this region. Our employees are local. We know the resources. Even if we go through that, as soon as that phone tree or, we hit 0, if we're able to work it out, it is going to be answered by one of our folks who can then call Drew's teams or Willipah's team or Cascade, the regional crisis teams, and get resources out as quickly as possible. So hopefully it's our workaround what is a national and state directive, I guess.
I gotta tell you, I don't think that national and state regulations and directives are necessarily the best thing to solve these kinds of problems. And as much as I understand the desire to follow state and federal regulations, in a case like this, I think that's a joke. I can't even imagine how much more far-fetched you can get than even thinking about having a phone tree answer for somebody in mental health crisis. I can't even imagine who would come up with that. Even AI's got to be smarter than that. And I don't think AI is all that intelligent right at the minute.
Right, and so, there are these opportunities to share this type of feedback, and we do that. As Joe mentioned, I'll be sitting on an alignment, 988 alignment work group over the next 3 days, and we'll share that feedback directly from you if that's okay.
Awesome. Please quote me.
Yes.
Well, and it's safe to say that the reason you guys are presenting this and the way that you're presenting is because you're on board with what Commissioner Farrell just said. You're trying to keep it localized, regionalized to our area so we can provide that personal service.
Absolutely, yes.
The business of serving people should not be more of a business.
It sounds more like a damn job creation program from the federal government than it does giving a crap one about somebody in a mental health crisis situation. This is management from, gee, I don't even want to say what I'm thinking. Okay.
Why not?
I'll
I
shut up
usually
for a
do.
minute.
When you're talking these 4 hubs, are you talking United States wide?
Washington, state of Washington.
4 hubs within Washington?
The state of Washington will be contracting with 4 hubs. And
4 hubs, and we want this to be one of those 4
we want this
hubs.
to be one of them.
Okay, so that's what you're asking from us, is to support this being one of the 4 hubs in Washington State.
Yes. Yes.
I don't have any
We
trouble
do
with that.
have more slides to go through. I'll make these brief because we've kind of touched on some of these as we've been having this discussion. So when do I call 988? As I mentioned, the vision is to have the help seekers call 988 as that first line of access to crisis services. So really it's when I or somebody I care about is seeking help for a behavioral health emergency. That's the direction, again, we're moving towards. So having that local provider would be most beneficial to our region. Next slide, please. So calling 988, there are trained crisis counselors that are available to take those calls. Those teams will then coordinate with our regional systems and to access mobile crisis response. So they do this in the least intrusive manner by having, the conversation with the individual about what's going on and then determining how to best capture the information to be able to handle the individual's needs over the phone entirely. Maybe there is no need for a dispatch, so they're able to, provide solutions and offer the support that individual needs over the phone, saving our mobile crisis teams time from having to go dispatch out to every single call. So I think it will help a little bit in help taking some of those calls. But, if it ever escalates to the point where our mobile crisis teams will need to be dispatched, that will happen through our regional crisis line. So next slide. Please, thank you. We did include a slide just to when to call 911. That doesn't change. If there's an emergency, call 911. We don't want to confuse people with what they need to do. I think as 988 becomes more it's marketed more in the communities, and it is at the level where it's being able to sustain the needs. That'll naturally happen. People will just start naturally calling 988. Next slide, please. Our regional crisis line, again, here's our number. The vision is for community professionals seeking consultation to access that line. And we're not turning it off, so those people, again, that have called this number for many years can continue to call this number. We're not changing it. We're actually porting it over to our new provider. Next slide, please. So who should call the regional crisis line? Here's just an example of those organizations. Again, it's that more of that professional component. So 911 will be one of those organizations that the PSAPs will be, accessing that regional crisis line for services. Next slide. This is just a diagram of what it looks like as far as a flow. Next slide, please. Key service organizations within the Great Rivers region. We have 4 contracted crisis providers within our region. Columbia Wellness, that serves also Cowlitz, Grace Harbor, and Wahkiakum counties as a mobile crisis team. So they go out and dispatch out in those counties in addition to the regional crisis line currently. Cascade Community Healthcare, which is our mobile crisis team provider that dispatches out individuals to the community in Lewis County. Olympic Health and Recovery Services will be our regional crisis line, and they currently respond out in the communities for the designated crisis responder services for all 5 counties. So their team is aware of all of all of our counties, travel through our counties on a regular basis, are familiar with our emergency room departments and, our terrain, these back roads, Highway 4, Highway 101, they're familiar with how to get around our region.
Trinidad, are they located in any one of these counties and do we have representation in every county or do you have to travel?
We have, for DCR staff, we have staff that live and deploy from each county. And we have offices in Lewis County and we're looking for Grays Harbor as well and here as well.
Our fourth provider is Willapa Behavioral Health, and they cover Pacific County. The 988 hub, again, that's operated by service providers. There's 3 currently in the state of Washington, Crisis Connections, Volunteers of America, and Frontier Behavioral Health. And we're, again, seeking your support in having the fourth be Olympic Health and Recovery Services. But that's contracted through the state of, the Washington State Department of Health. And lastly, last slide is just our contact information. This is the information for the individuals that are primary contacts for these changes. At any point, I'm happy to take any calls or any questions from any of you. And I do have business cards I can hand you as well for just help with any additional questions that may come up over your time I guess not over your time, in meeting with your community members as you're talking with other constituents, might have questions about our crisis system. Happy to take any of those calls. And that really concludes our slides. We do have a draft letter for you to review at your leisure that it was provided in the flash drive. And
That's what I was just gonna ask, if you have something already laid out.
Yep, we do, and it is available. I don't know if you'd like to pull it up now or, but it is a template so that we have that from every county. We don't have your letterhead, so we want to give you all opportunity to have internal discussion if you need, ask us other questions. And,
If we do get chosen as a hub, are you gonna use your current location or will you have to get a new location to do that?
To answer the phones, you mean?
Yeah.
I think we will be looking at a couple different locations as well as options to have hybrid phone answers, so folks that could answer from home. And to Drew's point, he mentioned that workforce is a concern, absolutely, for sure. The current 988 hub providers, so it's Volunteers of America, I believe they have 32 counties, including all of the counties in the Great Rivers region. The other provider is Crisis Connections, and they have King County, I believe, as the 988 hub. And then the third provider is Frontier Behavioral Health, and they've got the Spokane region. So none of them are remotely close to our regions, and so they currently answer from wherever, Everett, Snohomish County, I think, and primarily. But, or they have folks that are from out of state. Our goal is to keep everybody as local as we can, but to compete with those other 988 hubs, we likely will have to offer hybrid options. And so we're working now at training, making sure that we've got all of the right procedures and oversight in place to be able to do that efficiently. And of course, according to all confidentiality standards as we know them. But I think the biggest thing about that is, we will be connected by virtue of our continued service here with the DCRs, with the connection with Drew's team and the other mobile crisis teams. And so the folks that answer are familiar with the resources here. And that's the biggest challenge I think we've seen with the current 988 system is that, Volunteers of America are well-intended. I'm sure they are fantastic where they are normally out of, but they're just not part of the community here. So
How many employees do you see it's gonna take to handle that?
on the 988, that is tough to answer because right now the volume of calls is pretty low. I want to say it's 400 to 500 calls per month. Whereas as Drew pointed out, it's about 4,000 on the regional crisis line. At some point, there should be some sort of, leveling off where we will see less on the regional crisis line and more on the 988 side. So, we think there'll be some economy of scale and some mitigation on both of those lines with the same staff, so. And in any case, the ultimate goal, again, is to the help seeker not having, honestly, just for lack of a better word, not getting the runaround on how to get help. We want to be able to, the same person taking the call to be able to dispatch and reach out to Drew's team and get the folks out as quickly as possible. Or 911 or whatever the resource needs to be.
So if out of these 5 counties, you're averaging 4,000 calls a month, I can't imagine King County must average that many a night. Do you
Yeah.
have any idea on a statewide basis how many calls get made?
I'm not sure, yeah.
Yeah, I
It's,
don't have,
Any other areas or other counties or county groups that you're aware of, what the numbers are?
yeah, so,
Yeah, you can answer. In Thurston Mason, the calls are about 3,500 per month as well. So similar, yeah,
But that's 2 counties, not 5, right?
correct.
Yeah.
I don't have the data statewide, but, per capita, I believe our region has a higher volume of calls coming in. And I don't know what that's attributed to, whether it's just there's more need or a better job of getting the word out as far as that line being available. In the Great Rivers region, we've done, over this past 5 years or so, 6 years, have really tried to, have calls go through our regional crisis line so that we could have that first level of phone intervention before dispatching out mobile crisis teams. And I think maybe that's also contributed to the higher volume of calls.
Who is it that's going to decide whether or not you get to be a 911?
That will be
988.
the Department of Health, and I think in partnership with the Healthcare Authority of the state, I guess, or
Well, I just want to say thank you for your forethought in this, Trinidad, and getting this started and going, because on paper, if you look at that one slide, it looks like all we did was create another layer of bureaucracy. It doesn't look like we're providing a better service or anything like that. And thank you for doing what you can to mitigate whatever you can do to keep it local and to keep it personalized for our citizens.
You're welcome. And really, it's the work of the group here.
Mhm.
We came together to share this information because we all work together to ensure that individuals in our region have access to the services. So, Drew and Columbia Wellness have done a fantastic job, and I'm looking forward to the work that the Olympic Health and Recovery Services is going to do, and really us working together and having that open line of communication, working out some of the challenges that just happen over time. We have that relationship, and I think that's huge in ensuring the success of any transition or change as we move forward. So thank you all very much for your time. We really appreciate it. And the questions, thank you. We will
Thank
pass
you.
that information forward.
I think it's not an unreasonable request to try and keep things local. So I'm not really seeing any opposition to that. So I think we'll work that up and
Yeah.
put that recommendation for you. We just had the coroner's office in earlier today. 6 suicides these first 2 months of 2025.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just kind of emphasizes the need, right? Well, thanks for coming by, and we will prep that and get it for you.
All right. Well, thank you so
Okay.
much.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything else, gentlemen? Okay, we will adjourn.